If you're spawning on the runway in Flight Simulator 2024, you're missing half the experience. Today I'm showing you how to go from dead metal to cleared for takeoff using one of the simulator's most underrated new aircrafts. Welcome to week number 3 of Microsoft Flight Simulator A to Z. This week it's time for the letter C and I chose the term cold and dark. So let's get started. To start cold and dark, you cannot select the runway, you must zoom and click a parking spot or ramp. This is the only way to ensure the aircraft is completely powered down when you spawn. So let's zoom into one of these areas. I've selected the Canadair CL-145 because I think it's a nice aircraft. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into Norwich, which is over here, and if you click the item you can say zoom to details, which zooms into the airport. Now you can see a lot of white dots, right? You can see the ramps, you can see the runway itself, you can see the airport itself, you see, let's say, parking spots and other things. And there's where we're gonna start, because what we need to do is we need to select one of those ramps, right? So let's zoom in a little bit further. And here we can see a little bit closer the layout of the airport. Here we can see small ramps. We can also see here small ramps. We can see more small ramps, and we also see some helipads over here. But of course, this is an aircraft, right? So we need to put it on one of those parking, spaces. For this aircraft, I'm gonna put it on parking 103 because it's a little bit larger. And what you will now see is that we're located on Norwich, Echo Golf, Sierra Hotel. We're located on parking on 103, ramp GA medium, and then I simply click Start Flight. While the aircraft is loading and the airport is loading, what does cold and dark mean exactly? That means no battery, no fuel flow, no avionics. It's the ultimate way to learn your aircraft system. And in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, we can even do our pre-flight walk-around to check the airframe before we even climb inside. So as already mentioned, the nice thing about Flight Simulator 2024 is that you can do the external check, right? But where to start? Well, that's where the EFB comes in, because the EFB contains the checklist. And the checklist can be found inside the aircraft section, right? So let me show it quickly. You click on the aircraft, then click on checklist. That's where you find the checklist. Now for this aircraft, there's another nice benefit. You can move it to standard, which is the default value. You can also set it to advanced, but even set it to expert. And depending on the level, you will need to check more things. However, there's a real, I would say, caution for you. I would say all those standard things have the eye icon, which makes it easier to figure out where those items are. All those other things are not, I would say, listed where you can find them, so they might be a little bit hard to check or maybe even hard to find. So for this video, because it's, I would say, kind of a short one, we're gonna look at the standard one and I'm gonna walk you through the checklist, because there's some gotchas in this aircraft, to be honest. So first of all, we're gonna look at the safety pins. So you can either use the, eye icon, which identifies the safety pin, or you can simply search yourself. That's, I would say, easy, because there's a nice help system in Flight Simulator, and you might need to enable it because you might disable it. If you go into the settings menu, you can go to the flight interface, and there you will find the instrument names and tips. You can switch them on. Instant, that will directly show you the item. The other benefits, right, if I move around, I can also see which key I need to press to interact with it. Now that's really nice, isn't it? Well, maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it, but here's that, I would say that's the first tip which I want to give you. Then we need to go to the intake ports and vents, which are over here, right? So easy to discover, so I'm gonna press that. And then we need to make sure that the antennas are check secure. And also we need to remove those covers from the antennas. Now, one thing which is also a gotcha for this aircraft is that not all the steps are described even in the, I would say, standard checklist. And that might result in, I would say, some weird issues, because as you can see, there is something on the propeller, right? If I now would switch on the engine, I will likely damage it. So let me remove this part by pressing the mouse. And also let's remove it on the front, because there's also something over here which they call the, where is it? Come on. The static port cover. right? Also remove that part. And that's, I would say, something which you don't need to forget. The rest of the items are, say, kind of removed already, because that's the nice thing about Flight Simulator, or maybe it's not nice. If you do one thing, it will also do it on the other side, or similar parts. So, and also for this part, right, if I remove, for example, the chocks over here, they're also gone on the right side and on the other side where they're located. So in this case, we already moved the probes and antenna check, right? External bow check. So we can have a look at it as the aircraft, right, to inspect it. Now there are some other things which you can do, which are also not listed, even not in the external one, is that you can, let's say, watch the, for example, right flaps, but you can also look at the elevators, or the ailerons, sorry, and the elevators at the back of the aircraft, as well as the rudder, which you can, say, kind of check the status. Right, elevator, if you look like this, it says done, and you can do something for the rudder, as well as for the tires. So that wasn't that hard, right? There are some things in the external checklist which are super hard to find, to be honest. I'm still puzzling around where they are. But keep an eye on my channel, because I'm likely gonna do a full video on this aircraft, because it's a pretty interesting one. For now, we're gonna go inside the cockpit, because in this video we're gonna quickly go to how to go from cold to dark. Because hey, from cold to dark, right, to start. Not from cold to dark, because we already are in the dark, as you can see. So for this part, we can simply follow the checklist, right? I know that some of you might think, hey, but you're simply showing me how to follow the checklist. Yes, that's correct. But there are some gotchas, which I will, tell you in a few seconds. So you can see, okay, hey, everything is good, right? You can use these nice, let's say, eye icons to figure out where these parts of the aircraft are. Keep an eye on my channel again, because I'm gonna record a special series about this aircraft, because I do think it's necessary, because there are some things which are unknown and you might want to uncover. Landing lights are over here, switched off. Air data protection is also here. And also sometimes you need to move the move the EFB a bit. DC generators switch to off. Both ends. In-op simply means inoperational, right? So you can't do anything with it, so also keep that in mind. It needs to set bus tie initiator pressed out. So pressed out is simply a kind of weird text, right? But pressed out. So then you need to switch off the batteries. I was a little bit surprised about this step, because then I was thinking, okay, but what now? Because I still need to switch on the battery somewhere. But likely I would say this will be fixed. So let's not worry too much about this. Because here it says, for example, pressed out. Which is the case. Pressed out. I would say, still think it's a weird thing, right? Open, close. That's also done. Right, this one is easier, right? Simply says, okay, hey, they need to be switched to off. For the ignition, A, B, they're not listed, but they can be found over here, right? Which is on the, in the engine part, where you can switch them to off mode. And that's also the handy thing about this help menu, right? Because it directly shows you in which position they are. And then the engine needs to be set to normal, which is the case. Then the water drop needs to be set to salvo, which is the case. And then the next step, which is a little bit weird, it says it needs to be set to off. Well, I tried to find it. To be honest, I couldn't find it, because if I move this around, you can see that it says auto pair for auto, but there's no off option. So not sure what I mean with this. I will try to search for this and will add it to my, let's say, longer video about this aircraft. Then also pressed. Oh, and this one is a little bit challenging, because what you need to do is hover around a little bit to the bottom, and then try it 10 times, like I currently do. And then hopefully you can, let's say, needs to be pressed, right? Pressed out. Oh, pressed out. Pressed. Come on. This button is really frustrating, right? Oh, that's done. This one needs to be set to status master, which is not listed here, but it is, because that's the bottom one. which is good. And then we're gonna go to the these ones. It needs to be set to pressed out and guarded. That's the case. Mark these items off, and then also these need to be pressed and out, which is good. And simply press these buttons and then I would say move them out, right? Because that's likely what you need to do. Again, that's what I suspect. Then the engines need to be set to normal, right, left and right. Cam selection alters the RPM idle speed. So if you set the high cam results in an increased RPM idle and is used in hot conditions to keep the propellers above that critical speed. Well, it's not really hot, so we don't need to do that. Parking brakes can be found, I would say, over here. Oh, sorry. Over here somewhere. And these are, I would say, weird things, right? Because these are not, I would say, sometimes it's kind of weird that they simply say don't do that, right? Can release it. But hey. Oh, here's the parking brake. It needs to be set on. But sometimes it resets the view, but sometimes it doesn't reset the view. So the gear is down. See, we don't need to do it. And then this one, it needs to be pressed out. So we can press. And this is the same thing as that other button, right? It's super challenging to say press the button itself because you're likely will press the cover again. But hey, it's out because you can see it. Of course, I do recommend you to really check if it's out. Then the service lock, which is there, it's in lock position as required. Power levelers are ground idle. If you don't switch on the, I would say, help system, you won't be able to see this, I would say, information. So be aware of that you might want to, say, kind of figure out, okay, hey, what's the idle way? Here it says ground lock idle. As you can see, it's okay, kind of locked, right? It comes to this one, so you can't go full throttle. Ground idle, that's the one that you need to be in. Or flight idle, but ground idle for now. And then these ones need to be set to fuel off. So that's where the help menu really helps you, because if you don't switch this on, I would say you're kind of, I would say sometimes in the dark, right? Flaps also are on, right? You can see it, 10, 0, which is the case. So you might, for the first time, give this a try because it's much easier. Then we're coming to the batteries. So now we're going to switch on the batteries, right? So check battery has buzz off, light out. Well, that's not the case because they were, let's say, switched on, right? So let me do that. And then check the ESS bus, light out. Of course, you can also use the external power, which is over here. If you use that, that's also fine. It really depends. Here it says, okay, check cockpit check, battery, power supply check, and then cockpit check pre-start, which are, say, the same buttons in both areas. However, in this case, the external power initiator pressed in is if you want to use the external power, like I'm doing, then you can see, okay, hey, then the bus tie is closed, right? You can see the difference. Then the AC inverters, which you will find over here. Check fill and off lights are out. Well, they're not out, right? So I need to press them. Interior lights as required, so I can switch on the interior lights, which are now hidden behind this nice panel. So we'll move it and then we'll say, hey, fasten seatbelts, no smoking needs to be switched on boarding. Cabin lights can be switched on or off, depending on what I prefer to do. And then we're coming to the oil pressure, which is a little bit hard to see, but here they are, right? Overheat, in up, and we see the generator things. Likely I don't need to do much with this. Also was a little bit surprised that it says left oil pressure, what it says, and Gen 1 in up, warning. Well, that's the case. Then the auxiliary pump, which is over here, right? So I need to move it, then I can switch it on. but don't worry, we're gonna switch it off in a few seconds again. And then the hydraulic pressure, and the hydraulic pressure can be found here, right? So the hydraulic pressure, that's where you can see, okay, hey, this is where you see things are popping up, right? So now the hydraulic pressure pumps up, and you can see that the, I would say, brake pressure increases, the rudder pressure increases, the quantity increases. So it will take kind of build up the pressure, which is good. Flight controls must be in manual mode, and well, that was the case. And then it says, okay, hey, the hydraulic pump needs to be switched to off again. And we're gonna make sure that the gears, right, are also in a good state. Landing gear indicators. If APU or external power is not available, converse batteries by completing this check after one engine has been started, right? So that's also what they, if you don't have external power, don't do this check, but you can see already here that the lights are burning, which is good. And then the exterior lights, we can move on to this part, and then to the left side, can switch on, for example, the anchor light on, or the other lights on, depending on what you prefer and what's required, of course. Fuel quantity sufficient. It's over here. For now, it's okay. And then we missed one check, right? Because you can see we say checked almost all the items, but we didn't check these ones. So let's also make sure that they're not checked. And of course, we already validated that, I would say, earlier, but I simply forgot to switch them on or off. Then we're coming to the, between brackets, not the hardest part, but starting the engines. Parking brake is set. Then the propellers must be set to view off in both areas, and the power levelers need to be set to either flight idle or ground idle, right? You can see I can hover over it, which makes it easier. Again, it's really up to you if you want to do it that way. Then the batteries, they're switched on, which is good. The initiator, right? Check closed light out. Well, that's not the case. So let me say press this one, and then press this one, because that's now the case. Anti-collision lights switched on already. And then the flight controls mode initiators, check the manual lights, right? Are they on or off? It says, okay, levels must be in flight idle or check light, manual lights are on, which is not the case, but you can see they're blinking, right? So it's easy to figure out which ones you need to press. There's also another one here which says manual. So I do think that these are the ones which you need to press. But again, this is what I figured out based on some testing. Not sure if that's the way you should do it, but this looks like to be the way. Then we're going to go back to the ignition. They needs to be set to normal, right? Both of them. Start mode was already set to normal, as you can see. So that's good. So we're now ready for starting the right engine. Right engine. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this one to the right. Then it will appear like select, which is good. Then we need to make sure that check the RH pump, low pressure light, annex feed are out. Well, it's not the case, so we need to press it, because else it's out. Out is not good. Low pressure is still illuminated here, right? So that's something I figured out. But let's see how we can start the engines. Then engine start, check select and start. That's this button. We need to press it. Now it will be start, right? So let's have a look at if the engine really starts, because that's could be, between brackets, the next challenge. And to do that, what you can do is either press shift 2, I think it was. Yeah, shift 2, and you will see some things are changing. First of all, you see the hydraulics, they're increasing, which tends to be good. Then the other thing which you see is here is the engine oil, where you see, okay, this one is the right engine. And you see that the temperature is 49, which is good. So here it says, okay, the NH, which is this value, needs to be at 10%, which is the case, 18%. Then we can move the propeller, but only the right one, to start and feather. If you do that, if we now zoom into that other panel, a little bit hard, right? You need to move around completely. you will see that, I would say, the pressure now starts to climb a little bit further, which is good. So it says, okay, hey, let's move them on. Here it also says that you might want to move it to the level minimum, depending on temperature. And then you need to have a look at the ITT, right? Because if it comes into the red zones, especially this part, because this is temperature, right? ITT is for temperature checks. If it comes into the red zone, then you're not screwed, but it's not good for the engine. So watch out. So we've done that. Then it says wait until around 46%. Well, we're at 65%, so we're good. Then it says, okay, out of around 46%. So let's have a look at the start light. And you can see that automatically the lights are switched off. So both this one and this one are switched off. And then we need to check if the hydraulic pressure is increasing. Well, we already did see it was increasing, so we're good to go. Then we need to reset the generator, which we can find over here. So reset it first and then switch it to on. That will remove that in-up functionality, which is good because now say the generator is working and we can check it because there's a nice, I would say, instrument over here, the DC power, and we can move it on to the RGen. And here you can see that the engine provides energy. Right here we can see for the left engine it's still 0, but for the right engine it's 5.3. It's not, I would say, documented how, let's say, how much it needs to be, but hey, 5.3 looks okay. Then we're moving around to the X start. That's this one. So we need to now cross start the engine. So we're gonna move this one to select, which we did. Fuel pump, right? We're gonna double check it. Fuel pump is over here and it still says pressure. So let's press it. And then we're gonna make sure that we can start the engine. And we're gonna repeat the same thing as we previously did. We're gonna have a look at this one. You can see that, I would say, things will move on, right? You can see that the engine oil is increasing, right? It's good. Also this part, the N, starts to increase, which looks good to me. Because it needs to be at 10%. Well, we're at 18%. The other thing which you observed is that the pressure, which it was a warning, is now, let's say, stop blinking, right? So it stops warning you, hey, something is going wrong. Then we need to move the propeller fat to start feather. Which we also did. And then we can check the temperature, right? The temperature of the engine, again, it's super important to watch it, because if you don't do it, you will be screwed. You can see that the N is climbing, the temperature is also climbing, and the pressure is also climbing to roughly 60, similar like the other engine. Then if it's at 48%, which it is, then we need to check the start. And the start button has been automatically switched off, which is good, as well as the select light. Then we need to switch the start switch to normal again. A and B ignition are off, right? So can we switch the ignitions off because the engines have been started. And then the DC generator for engine number 1, which is over here, we reset it, and then we are switching it to on. And there it says, okay, check generator 2 in up and alternate closed light out. Well, that was the case already. Because it's a little bit weird, right? Because I do think that this might be generator 1, because generator 1 needs to be, I would say that's good for now. Although here it says, yeah, here it says that you need to off and on. Well, off, on. Well, that worked. Okay. The other thing which I do think they missed, but I'm not 100% sure about that, is that you also can, of course, check the voltage. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Of the left generator. Let me try to move around. So what you can do is also check it over here, right? 5.4 and 5.3, which is, I would say, DreamHack is good. Then we're onto that next section, right? Because we're not yet ready to taxi. So we're not finished closing or starting the engine from, or starting the aircraft from cold and dark to fully operational. So we're going to make sure that we're going to say select open, close and auto modes, right? So we can say, hey, I want to auto mode. That's the center option. Close on the right side, opens on the right or left side, sorry, opens on the right side. We will leave it as is. Press initiator and check open light on. So we can switch to open. Right, see it's manual. And now I set it to auto again and you see it switched off. That's what I think is normal. Then the stall warning, which you can find over here. We can hold and release it. I didn't hear anything, but it's not sure what they need to do. Then the engine start, center position, which is the case. Hydraulic pressure. Also over here, what we need to do, check for pressure and quantity. Well, it still is in yellow, but I would say, I think it's correct. I'm not 100% sure. I would expect that this would not would be yellow, but maybe it's normal. And then check the altitude indicator, right? Unlock the gauge. So how can I do that? Check no flag. Well, nothing is working currently, so maybe it is normal, maybe not. Uncage it. I don't have any clue because I can't uncage it because it needs to, let's say, oh, this, well, we can move this one around. Looks okay to me, to be honest. Flight controls. Then it says flight controls. Check manual lights are out. No. So let's do that. And the surface lock, you need to remove it. Because if you don't remove it, you can't go full throttle. That simply is the only reason. Then the flight controls, right, move left, right, see if the aircraft is working. Well, this works. Check manual lights on. Check the trim controls. Trim controls are over here, right? This is the elevator trim, both of them, right? You can trim it. Can do that if you want. And then the aileron and rudder trims, which are, say, over here, right? This one and this one, which are in the center position. Elevator trim. You can change it if you want to take off, but I will cover it in a later video. And the conditional prop levelers are set to both max. Well, do they need to be set to both max? Yes, we need to adjust it. So set them to max. And then you'll likely see some things happening over here also with the engines. Maybe not. You can see that the hydraulics are now, I would say, turning to green. Which is, I think, good. The other thing which you see is that there are some other gauges, I would say, are changing. And also, this part looks like to have been changed. Also, you can see numbers are climbing a bit, right? The ITT, the temperature, is still in the green area. However, the NP is in the red area. And that's also why this one is blinking, which likely gives you a warning that there's something, I would say, is not 100% correct. But let's skip it for now. Then the water drop controls, check. And then for land, take off. Yeah. So this is a duplicate item. So likely it's an issue. And then you're ready to taxi, right? So we're good to go. But that's for another video, right? Because in another video we're gonna have a deeper look at this aircraft, because I do think it's a super interesting one. So in this video, to recap, we did a cold and dark, which simply means no power, no engines, no nothing, and then simply bring the aircraft to life, which we did in this video. I hope you liked it. Have a look at my channel, because it's almost time next week for the letter D from Delta. I already posted a survey, so make sure that you're, let's say, voting that survey, because you now have the option to decide which topic we're going to discuss in next week's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next week.